Lots of key injuries to discuss, their ramifications. I'm Chris Spags, joined today by a man who just before he came on the air told me that he puts Mountain Dew in his hair to keep it looking nice and fresh before the shows. Mr. Fast Eddie Fear. How you doing, Eddie, and how's the Mountain Dew?
That's the Mountain Dew is fine. Let me get a sip here. Delicious and good for your peptide collagen something. No, so I don't ever do anything with my hair, which, depending on the length of my hair, is fine. I have nice poofy hair, and it does things. But as I go longer and longer between a cut right now, it gets looking like a little bit like a motorcycle helmet. Like, it just goes... I have a very Jared Allen thing going on right now. Okay, and it's not quite Jared Allen, but it's not... People who are watching the show are like, yeah, I can sort of see what that guy's talking about. So... to make it look a little less ridiculous, I will occasionally take the beverage of champions here and just sprinkle. I know you're not watching, but just there you go, just a little bit on the head, and then and this feels good. Let's just get.
Oh boy! I mean, I guess it makes sense. It has like some gel-like components.
Oh, let me tell you, this shit is gonna stick like hay when we're. Oh, there we go. That's looking good. Look at that. Now I got like a pompadour going on. This is absolutely what everybody tuned in for. So now I look like less like Jared Allen than Elvis just before he died. Which, in fairness, was almost exactly my age. So there we go. Looking good.
Once you have the Mountain Dew in the hair, you know we're ready to rock today. We got a big slate. We have a lot of guys to talk about. But first, we do have to give a little shout out to Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is, of course, the new DFS app where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes. Pick 10 props out of the 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth. So that's where the game theory comes in. Yeah, boy, I'm really enthusiastic on this read today. Go check the link.
I'm going to the website right now.
I'm dropping the link in the YouTube chat right now. You get $10 on a $10 deposit, $20 on a $100 deposit, and $50 for $200 or more. That's fast release. You get that one right away. So go check that out now. Let's talk about one guy up front, Mr. Mountain Dew. Tell me what you think about James Harden's over-under of 43.5 points. You get over, for the over, you get 80. For the under, you get 120.
43.5 is a nut. I haven't projected for under that, and if you're giving me a weighting to, I will take the under. Not that it's insane to think the man might score 44 points in a game, but in a difficult matchup, tired and after a prolonged squawk, I'll take the under on it, I guess. But again, if he turns into a rocket and sails into the sun, I wouldn't be that surprised with James Harden at this point. But I'll take the under. Why not? It's a tough matchup.
It is a tough matchup. I mean, there are some symmetries here. It's hard for me not to harken back to Kobe's big game versus the Raptors many years ago, which is really the one mark that Harden has left to hit now is to have an 80-point day. But I will take the under. I think he's going to do more assist making and stuff like that. If he does hit value, that's how it's going to come today. But go check out Thrive Fantasy now. Play that prop. Eddie, while we're talking James Harden here, give me your thoughts on the beard. What is he going to do tonight?
Oh, I'll say he's going to have a pretty quiet night, a relatively pedestrian 71. It's the more value is opened up and really good value. It ends up being really site dependent. Yahoo has the most really stupid value, and then FanDuel has a lot of pretty stupid value, and then DraftKings is keeping you relatively honest. So again, during the day, I build a FanDuel, Yahoo, and a DraftKings GPP and cash lineup. And I don't have any James Harden on DraftKings right now. I do have him on both FanDuel and Yahoo. I'm not saying that's necessarily instructive. There's just a lot of value I like that is priced up a lot more on DK, or at least enough that it's a little stickier to get him in there. You could easily do it. The DK lineup I'm looking at right now goes back and forth between having, Giannis and Luka, or having Towns and Kawhi. And obviously, you could very easily turn that $19,000-$20,000 into Harden and another 6K guy. So if you want James Harden, by all means, have him. And we'll never obviously know, but I would think tonight, were you to average his points out, you would be looking at something in the area of 70 and not something in the area of 75, 77, 78, 80. For that reason, I really like Giannis at his price. I think Giannis gets 60, so I guess I'm going with, most probable outcomes for me is I can get Giannis to get me 60 at his price and save $2,500, $3,000, $3,000 plus dollars. On Harden, I think I get to 10 or 12 more. So, forced to land on a binary in a non-binary situation, yeah, I would go more with Giannis than Jimmy.
So yeah, I'm on the other side. I think I get why Giannis seems like a smart play, and it's very possible for the Hornets to shoot themselves into that game. We've talked about it a bunch of times. The Bucks give up a ton of 3-point attempts. Obviously, they have some competent shooters there. I just like Harden here. Like I think this is one last night for him to go nuts. I think he's aware of that. It seems like he's really aware of what he's doing right now, based upon how he's talking after that Garden game. And I think to me, if you take this value and go to Kawhi and Harden today, I think that's a pretty appealing little pairing that could end up just trading buckets back and forth.
Yeah. Love the game stack. I have that in one of the lineups I'm looking at right now. I have absolutely no objection with that configuration. I want to pivot immediately to something I said in the green room and have mentioned in chat and people are still talking about, which is Enes Kanter. If Enes Kanter starts today, which I don't think is at all impossible in this matchup, he's my favorite play on this slate demonstrably. I mean, very, very significantly. It's just an absolutely brilliant spot. There's still no Luke Cornett. I don't know how many minutes you project him for, but I would project him for north of a fantasy point and a half a minute, which is what he's done all 3 games against the Nets this year. This is the swan song matchup for these two teams. This is the 4th time they've gotten together this year, and I haven't actually looked it up. I'll look it up. Let's look it up together. It'll be a fun little bus trip. Everybody aboard the Dayglow painted school bus, and let's go ahead and take a look at what Enes Kanter.
He's had 3 games over 45 points, if I'm recalling correctly. I think including one in the preseason.
I think there's one that was under where he was off the bench for like 23 and 35. I want to say. I don't think he actually got 45 all 3, but it was around a fantasy point and a half a minute.
Well, I mean, including the preseason one, I think he did. But you're right that there was one game where he fell short.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 3 regular season games. First game, second game of the season. Let's see, 35 minutes, 48 fantasy points. That's pretty good. Let's go on to game number 2. Only about 2 weeks after that, so we're still very much at the beginning of the season when they had not needlessly killed my guy. But he was already coming off the bench. But in this game, he played 26 minutes, 37 fantasy points. Final meeting of the year until this one, of course, December 8th. Back in the starting rotation, only 26 minutes, a meager 48.5 fantasy points. Now, there's an extent to which you don't like game log watching, but Moutier is out, which would lead to very possibly a more... which, by the way, means I also very much like Tim Hardaway before you get there. Was also very good in a couple of these games and just should have a more pronounced role in the offense. I like Tim Hardaway quite a bit today anyway. But if Enes Kanter starts at like $4,700 and a depressed ownership, I like having a Enes Kanter Derek Favors playing. Just having a set-aside Enes Kanter Derek Favors spot in the advent Kanter starts and or Gobert is out. Just to have that pivot spot ready to go on your lineup, I think would be the best way to go. Because I would be massive fans of both those guys in the aforementioned circumstances. But, just want to mention that because they were talking it up in chat. I believe by giving him the start, that would have to be considered some sort of olive branch by Fizdale. So people are like, he could start and play 15 minutes. That would be really odd mixed messaging for me. I'm not saying it's by any means impossible. Clearly, Fizdale has shown he may start him playing 2 minutes and bench him the next 46. I'm not saying anything is impossible, but the most likely scenario for me would he would start him and give him starters minutes. And let's assume that's a fairly safe, 27. I'd project him for somewhere near 40 fantasy points, which for 4,700, and depending what time the news broke, would feel really, really good for me, and especially in the world of Mason Plumlee and him just sticking it in everybody's Turkish backside not that long ago. I don't think people would flock there that quickly, so I'm pretty excited if you get Enes Kanter starting tonight.
Yeah, that certainly seems like a good spot for him if he does get there. Talk to me about the point guard situation there. We have Emmanuel Mudiay out with a shoulder issue for at least a couple of weeks. It looks like Lonzo Trier was smashing, taking minutes away from him anyway. Over 30 minutes his last 2 games. Usage rate climbing, looking good to me, but his price is up. Also, Trey Burke popping a lot in the optimizers with people giving him minutes, it seems. What do you do with the Knicks backcourt?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have it right there. It is worth pointing out that, as you mentioned, Alonzo Trier, back-to-back 30-plus minutes and doing stuff, looks very similar to Frank Ntilikina, the difference being Alonzo Trier is good at fantasy basketball and Frank Ntilikina is good at basketball. You can certainly still play Ntilikina where you're saving some money, and now it seems very likely you get 30 minutes out of him. Especially on FanDuel where you can drop him. Burke makes a lot of sense in tournaments. Not out of play on other sites, but exactly how they manage his minutes does change things a little bit. Moving past that, let me move my stuff around and change some volumes on a couple things while I remember. Mitch Robinson still in play for this Nets team. Someone mentioned, doesn't Jared Allen do well against Enes Kanter? He does fine. It's an above average matchup for him. It's not the total ass smashing that it is for Enes Kanter, who likes to smash that ass. But it's still fine. There is an upside. You're spending more money, and I think there's a real chance you get Ed Davis a little bit, and just Kanter's a more productive play for me. But I have no issue with you starting, $5,800 Jared Allen right now. There's a ton of mispriced centers who are brilliantly priced tonight. But Jared Allen is fine, but it's not, I don't like it as, if you told me they were getting the same number of minutes, it's Kanter for me, not close, even if they were the same price. Regarding the backcourt and your commentary there, yeah, it's tough to know what would happen with Burke. You might get a similar situation that enhances Kanter's time in the same way that we saw some of the guards pick up extra time because of the fact that they put Kanter on the bench. So they said, hey, we're going to start Kanter. Kanter's going to be our guy. We're going to start him. And then fuck him, we're going to start Noah Vonleh. Vonleh starts, and everything sort of shifts down a little bit. Lance Thomas comes into the rotation, but Vonleh, instead of spending most of his time at the 4, spent all of his time at the 5, splitting the 5 with Mitchell Robinson. That allowed a little more time where your 2s were playing 3, and that allowed your guards to get in a little bit more time. So you're looking at, a possibility of the fact that, we're sort of out on the guards now. Everybody shift up a step. You're doing the reverse thing. Vonleh plays more time back up at the 4. Maybe Kanter comes in at the 5. There's a lot of different ways it can go, but I feel pretty confident in Hardaway. Your commentary on Trier makes a lot of sense. He's been performing over his head a little bit, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, the guy is very good. He earned the contract and getting to stick with the team, but was, I want to say 12 for 18 last game. I don't know if 18 shots comes again. So I'm totally fine with him at his price around $5K. He is $11 on Yahoo. He is one of a couple guys who got priced up other sites who didn't. If you're playing on Yahoo, let me get the list real quick. Him, Kenneth Reed is still the tenor, as opposed to having been moved up to 5 on the other sites. That makes a ton of sense. Justin Holiday is still sitting on 12, where he's more on the other sites. And Will Barton is, meh priced, but still a ton of upside. I really like Will Barton. I really like Will Barton on DraftKings, where he's 6,100, I think, without Jokic against Phoenix, with the minutes limit largely irrigated, if not entirely removed. I'm a big fan of Barton. FanDuel, now he's 5,100. Now I've got myself in a tizzy. And Yahoo, where he's $13. I'm positively fanning myself on a bench in Savannah. I'm so excited about Will Barton. So big fan of Will Barton there, while I'm mentioning guys who are way the hell too cheap on Yahoo. But Trier at $11 does feel pretty sexy with no Moutier. Ntilikina, obviously less of an upside. We're going to see 30-plus minutes now. And Burke, I currently have sitting at 23 minutes. That's my best guess. I'm not shocked to see 0, 15, or 37. So brilliant tournament play, especially on FanDuel, where you can drop it. We can see Dotson playing a lot of positions, Trier playing a lot of positions, Hardaway playing a lot of positions, Knox at the 3 or the 4. Like, this team can go a couple ways. But no interest on Mitch Robinson on FanDuel, but both DraftKings and Yahoo still priced pretty attractively just for a tournament guy. For the same number of reasons, you could randomly get 28 minutes out of Mitch Robinson one of these days, and he's a fantasy monster, and the matchup is, again, brilliant for whoever the hell is playing center. So whoever starts at center, you're going to love. If it's Vonleh, if it's Robinson, or if it's Kanter, that guy's going to be pretty appealing. I think your most likely bet is Vonleh. I'd go, you're something like 75% Noah Vonleh gets the start at center. But there's at least some chance that it's Kanter. And again, I'm not worried about the minutes if it is him. That has to be viewed as some sort of olive branch or message from the front office, or just wanting to keep his trade value up by not completely shitting on him or recognizing his commitment to the community or whatever the hell. But I think if they start him, it's for real and they're not randomly, fish hooking him.
Let's talk about the other side of that. We have a very chalky player on the Nets backcourt with Shabazz Napier filling in for Spencer Dinwiddie. He's going to be out for a bit with a finger. That was an appropriate time for that. With Dinwiddie out for a couple of weeks with a finger injury, it looks like. Russell looks good to me as a result, but I think Dinwiddie as well. Obviously an interesting play who has some pretty nice upside here versus a Knicks team who is really not very good defensively in any way. How are you feeling about Napier here if he's going to be a very chalky play?
Yeah, I mean Dinwiddie is out. I don't know if you misspoke. You just said Dinwiddie as well has some interest for you. Dinwiddie with his finger.
Oh yeah, I said yeah. He has a finger injury. He's out for a couple weeks. I have no interest in Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I would. I mean, he's a very nice man. I'd sit down and have dinner with Andre with him or something. But no, yeah, I think you've correctly labeled the first two guys we should be most interested in here. I mean, the Knicks are really bad, so I have some degree of tournament interest in DeMarre Carroll, where he's now down to a more reasonable 4,700, or Ed Davis, who can hit the upside, as a pivot off a reasonably chalky Jared Allen, or somewhat owned Jared Allen, or Joe Harris, who just always gets his minutes. But yeah, I think the three guys we're looking at are Allen and then Russell and Dinwiddie. Russell's been sublime, and it's unlikely to be a spot in which he cannot perform, like when you drink too much before you go home.
I might be able to relate.
Sorry, that was too much. I lost my train of thought. I thought I made myself so funny. Yeah, so your big reason that you didn't like taking D'Angelo Russell was less frequently over the last, say, 3 or 4 weeks, only about one game out of the last 15. Dinwiddie started looking good and then would put his ass on the bench for no particularly good reason, because it's really hard to guard both those guys, but they just did this thing for the longest time where D'Angelo would be going off, Dinwiddie's at the fourth. Dinwiddie would be going off, and they would just sit D'Angelo down as opposed to trying to deal with life without Joe Harris and giving the other team defensive nightmares. But that possibility now gone, he feels pretty good. Like, my man is taking over, and it's the Knicks. If they're playing almost any other team today, I'm starting to balk at 8,500, 8,800, really expensive D'Angelo Russell. Against the Knicks, like, that feels pretty good. It's almost cashy. Like, my man's been putting up around 50. 50 feels pretty good.
4 out of 5 games over 50 points.
Yeah, and getting rid of, Dinwiddie obviously, shores it up a fair amount. I guess there's the possibility of a blowout. The Knicks are that bad. But, yeah, I like D'Angelo Russell quite a bit. I do think the Shabazz Napier chalk is fairly good chalk. Obviously, FanDuel where it's droppable. But DK at 3,600. I have to go back and forth on that and Akobo as to who I like more as throwing a super punt. But I like both those guys. I do think they are good chalk. I don't have an issue if you play both of them. Akobo just at the flat 3K, I think is likely to play 26 minutes. I have him at right now. There's some range for above that. There's possibility of below that, but he's obviously super, super cheap. And then, Shabazz Napier, I think, gets back towards at least his range he was seeing for a while, which is 27, 28 minutes. And you have to like him against the Knicks at that price. So, yeah, I think you've correctly identified the best targets on this team.
We should talk about another chalky guy. You mentioned Will Barton on Denver. He is a guy who has gotten a big boost with Jokic out of the lineup. Obviously, another guy who's going to get a big boost there is Mason Plumlee. We're going to do the halftime Daddy Likes, of course, but he is projected to be the highest owned player on the slate by quite a decent margin is Mason Plumlee. I like him a lot here. I don't want to get away from him. I've always enjoyed playing him, even when he's low owned, when he's not starting. I think Plumlee, if he's at the right price, looks great, and he is very much at the right price for a game versus Phoenix. How are you feeling about Mason Plumlee here? And I guess the other Nuggets as well. I would say Millsap jumps out as a guy too for me.
Yeah, he's a monster. I have his worst price is the $14 on Yahoo, where picking your centers is really tough because you have $10 for Reed, $14 him, and then several amazing centers. So you're making some really difficult choices in constructing your lineup there. But Mason Plumlee is easily worth the price. He's great chalk. I won't throw the 100% tag on him because there are so many excellent centers, and I can think of raw points scenarios in which you would not necessarily want to have full exposure to him, where someone else puts up full value. So he's your only center on FanDuel. He is he's most busted on DK, especially where he should be the most known, because he's also forward eligible. So now you have this situation where, as opposed to he's one of your two amazing center spots on Yahoo, he's your only amazing center spot on FanDuel. He doesn't cost you shit on DK. He's one of your 4 eligible spots, forward, power forward, center, and utility. So, yeah, and he's, I believe, proportionally the cheapest, where he's like $3,900. So, yeah, he's just a goddamn monster. So, won't throw the tag on him, but were I to throw the tag on one of these excellent value guys today, he would be the first one. Past that, I think Barton is my next guy. Price combined with everything. Again, that price is somewhat variable. 61 on DK is more than fair. I like him a lot in this spot. They have largely given up on the minutes limit on him, or at least enough that he can certainly achieve an upside to beat these prices. In the last game against Utah, with Jokic in there, he played 29 minutes and had like 45 fantasy points. So he's going to play as many minutes as they need for him to win. He should be the focal point of this offense, or at least a focal point of this offense. Sans the big man in there, and especially at 51 on FanDuel and $13 on Yahoo. I just project him for very nearly 40 fantasy points. I cannot get away from Will Barton under any circumstances. Past that, I do think the next guy is Millsap. There are a lot of flaws with the game log watching. I kept talking about Barton today, and other people are like, well, I looked it up, and I saw that the bigger usage went to Millsap, and that's missing apropos of a hell of a lot of things that we don't have to necessarily get into right now. But one of which, just one of many reasons that doesn't quite hold, is Millsap is not playing well. And Millsap is on his decline, or he's over the top of the hill. I don't know how far down the hill, but he's moving down the other side at this point. So, and so just for me, I'm absolutely fine with Millsap at 51 or 58 or whatever the hell he's priced at Yahoo. There's obviously a huge upside there. He always carries, I can get 50, and in a spot against the Suns without Jokic, I'm not going to talk anyone out of it, but I do think that he's a secondary option for me relative to Plumlee and Barton, who are 1 and 2 for me. And then certainly don't forget about Gary Harris and Jamal Murray, even at not getting bargain prices anymore. On FanDuel, still, Gary Harris is still way, way too cheap. It's tough because he is also a small forward on FanDuel for some reason. So you're now dealing with Tobias Harris, who I especially like on FanDuel, without Gallinari at his. He's a little too cheap there, actually. And Barton, who I obviously love, and Giannis, who we've previously discussed, and Kawhi, who you mentioned in this. There's just a lot of stuff going on FanDuel at small forward. So it's really hard to get my second favorite small forward on the team in there if you're building one lineup. But if I'm building 150 lineups, I have something like 50 Barton and 30 Harris or something like that. Like, I would have a lot of exposure to those two players. Someone asked about Trey Lyles. I like Trey Lyles quite a bit. He's very nominally priced. Obviously in the threes everywhere. I still think sitting in the minimum on Yahoo and is your, I think this game blows out sort of option there. If you think this game stays close, and again, Phoenix does put up some pluck at some odd intervals here, so that wouldn't shock me to see that, then I think Trey Lyles probably still spends time in his 18, 20, 21 minute role, something like that. And he's still fine. I would like him points per dollar less than Barton, less than Plumlee, probably less than Millsap, but he still looks absolutely great as a guy who is a fantasy point per minute producer and is playing against the Suns. So your downside option, if you play him, especially where he's droppable, is just fine. So feel free to play Trey Lyles, but you are hoping the game blows out and he plays the entire fourth quarter where he can really put up some damage.
Yeah, I'm with you on Lyles. I think it's an interesting play. I mean, to me, I think he's still going to get some decent run because, there's nobody else big in that second unit now if Plumlee's going to be starting. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. And I would push back a little bit on Millsap. I think he's washed up for the most part too, or at least getting closer to what that is. But 1.47 points per minute with Jokic off the floor this year, 120-minute sample size. So not the biggest, but it is noteworthy to me that he jumps out as being significantly better without Jokic available.
Yeah, I mean, that is 3 games, which is fine, but it has everything to do with like even who those games were against. Like, especially with splits like that, I often get people who give me some really false splits where they're like, Otto Porter without this guy and without this guy has this usage rate, and it's like, yeah, well, that's also without this, and the 2 games that guy missed were against Phoenix and against Charlotte, which were great matchups, and then some of the games that we're counting him were against Memphis, Utah, and so it's when the splits get down to 100, 120 minutes, plus so much of Millsap's production comes in other ways. And then when you're talking about that time with Millsap, with Jokic off the court, how much time was Barton on the court?
I could double check that.
It doesn't. I'm just saying, but that would largely taint it for me. If you told me that Barton only played 11 of those 120 minutes, I'd be like, well, okay, I will go back to my theory that Barton is the man in control.
Yeah, all right. NBA Wowie, of course, not going to help us out with content. Why would it? But yeah, I'll take a look. If that does load at some point, you'll hear about it. Oh, there we go. Good. Here's interesting. So 11 minutes shared with Will Barton. with Jokic off the court. 1.92
Was it
for
11
Millsap.
minutes? Was it 11?
11 total.
I just said that off the top of my head. I don't know if you heard me. I said if like only 11 of those minutes were with Will Barton. Okay, that was just weird.
You did say that.
I don't know if anybody saw that. That was very peculiar.
Weird.
I have not looked that up. That was really peculiar. That was the random number I picked. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so it is 11 minutes, but it's 1.92 DK points with per minute. So I mean, look, the smallest of sample sizes, but I think Millsap. If people are going to sleep on him, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, he's great. I didn't think people were going to sleep on him. I thought what do we have him projected at? I thought he was going to be boosted a little bit.
He is at where are you at, Paul?
Like I would think low teens.
Why is this not? Come on, Control F. Everything's just trying to hurt me today. 11%.
Look at 11's. 11's coming up everywhere. I'm gonna go play some craps. Yeah, no, I like Millsap just fine. I do stick with liking him behind Plumlee and Barton, but I would rather play Paul Millsap in a vacuum than Trey Lyles.
And Barton too lower owned as well. So to your point, 5% projected ownership for Barton.
Yeah. Okay. See, then I think that's preposterous. I think maybe I'm wrong here, but Barton looked really good for me in the last game. I expect him to it's just. At a certain point, it's just eye test. Barton looked really good in the one game, really, I've watched him play since then. Millsap has looked kind of crappy in his last X games, and I just think Barton is fresh and going to run out there and do lots of damage. I 60-40, I think he outscores Millsap in this game, not 90-10. Like, I'm not. Plus, Millsap has such better peripheral usage. Like, if you told me in a matchup with the Suns, Millsap picked up 4 blocks and 2 steals, I'd be like, yep, that was possible. So... I'm not trying to talk anyone off Millsap whatsoever, but especially if I'm getting reduced ownership and reduced price almost everywhere. I would have Plumlee, then Barton, then Millsap as far as gross love for those guys.
That seems fair. Lineup note just coming through. Bobby Portis officially starting ahead of Robin Lopez tonight. So another cheapish play. How are you feeling about Bobby Portis before? Actually, let's do the halftime Daddy likes here. Of course, you can get our ownership projections at Osmo.com along with Osmo's rankings. He is the top player in the world for a reason. Go check it out now. Promo code live before lock will get you 50% off. I could say personally, some people in the chat, I appreciate you guys congratulating me. I did win the N1 on DK yesterday, which obviously a lot of our viewers and readers are on. So I was very happy about that. But honestly, I couldn't have done it without our ownership projections. It gave me the kind of advantage to be able to see that Jahlil Okafor was just going to be way too owned. So that gave me a nice pivot point while still game stacking that Thunder game. So I was very happy with our ownership projections. You would be too. So check them out at Osmo.com. Promo code live before lock for 50% off. Eddie, Mason Plumlee, 71% projected ownership. How are we feeling about that, Daddy?
Daddy likes it. Over. It's too good, man. Sorry, he's too good. You project him for like 35 fantasy points. If you want to move off him, there's certainly a chance you can grab other value plays and get there. I mean, it's not just the guys we've talked about. There's a Kobo and Napier. There's Tyler Johnson, who, if you're talking about DK, who's a little bit more than Mason Plumlee and obviously completely disparate positions. But Spoelstra talked about him that, I think I'm going to keep him in that role and he's going to start in the rotation. So I'm reasonably confident he plays 34 minutes today. I can't get away from, pointy guard guy 34 minutes against Cleveland, who's especially shitty against that position. That's pretty exceptional value. So is there a chance that, the best lineup contains, I don't know, Napier and Tyler Johnson, or Tyler Johnson and Elliot Kobo and then Barton and Millsap and only one stud? Like, sure, I can see that lineup coming in and Giannis being the most expensive guy in there, so you don't need any more value because you're not trying to stack in Harden. Like, sure. So if you wanted to build a lineup and not have Mason Plumlee in it, for correctly identifying your Plumlee, not Miles, not Marshall, but Mason. Thankfully, we don't have more than one playing tonight because that's been disastrous in the past.
The people can only handle so much Plumlee. I think that's
true. But
brain just explodes.
Daddy likes it. I'd get on top of 71% probably.
Yeah, I would agree too. It seems like there's really hard for him to fail today.
Although I will say, if you're talking about him failing, did you see his slam dunk competition performance? He was in there.
He was in there. He did not do the best. Not the best for white men jumping on that particular day.
Seriously, we already have.
Shabazz.
We already have a stigma. He set us back another 10 years.
He did, but he tried, and that's what we look for from our scrappy.
Somewhere at home, Rex Chapman was like, "Really, really."
After all we've done, after how far we've come, you do this.
We've come so far.
Shabazz Napier, number 2 on the ownership with 57%. How does Daddy feel about that?
I like it less. I'll go with the under on Shabazz Napier. I think he's great, but assuming we're going to have Tyler Johnson around 30, again, I haven't looked. I'm pulling this number out of my ass. I would rather run half-owned Tyler Johnson versus Shabazz Napier. No, you're spending $600 more, but both in great matchups. But a little more confident in the minutes for Tyler Johnson, first of all. I think I have Shabazz Napier in right now for 27, 28 minutes. I have Tyler Johnson in for 34. So I'll take 6, 7 extra minutes. And just, it's the Nets. I can see ways that he fails. Plus, he's just not as productive as a guy, and I'm not shocked if he randomly plays 22 minutes because they do. I don't even know what the hell Theo Pinson bullshit. So I guess I'd like the under on 57. So Daddy does not like Hines.
Now we got a big old drop to number 3, who is Giannis, 26% projected ownership.
Yeah, good. That's about the right number. Daddy likes. I mean, third matchup with Charlotte this year. Had almost exactly 60 fantasy points each of the first 2 times. I haven't projected for just a hair under that this time. But just looks good. The price has come down, and the matchup is great. Charlotte's defense has really gotten shitty. Yeah, I like Giannis quite a bit. So we'll go with Daddy likes on that one.
Number 4 on the list, Tyler Johnson, 24% versus Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, I prefer it to Napier. Oven by itself in a vacuum, he has produced well the last few games, and the matchup is great, so I still like it. But, I have some concern that he can, randomly throw out 18 fantasy points here. Like, he is a guy who can disappear for fantasy purposes. The minutes could come down just because you get a big Dwayne Wade game who has some history with Cleveland in his last game there, who, I can see that not working out, but objectively on its face, it's still a pretty stellar spot at 4,200. Another guy who I think 11 on Yahoo. 11? Yeah, he's 11. So just another guy who on Yahoo, where that translates to basically being the equivalent of 2,300, 2,400 or something. There's so many guys over there who are 10 to 14 that it's really hard not to build like Harden, Giannis, and guys who cost 10 you project to score 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, not a bad approach for Yahoo today. And use promo code AWESEMO if you're depositing there. I think we're still doing that.
Nice plug.
Jared Allen coming in at number 5, 23% projected ownership.
No, I'll give the patented Davis Matic wave on that one. I like Jared Allen. I really like Enes Kanter. If I could get some news, is that a 7:30 game? It's a 7:30 game, right? That's perfect timing, everyone. We're gonna get Enes Kanter starting news at 6:53, and I expect you all to pivot like a goddamn well-trained marching band. But I'll take the under on that. There's just a lot of centers I love. Center is just a wonderland of guys I want to play in tournaments. So, if he's going to be that much, play identically priced Willie Cauley-Stein. I don't particularly like him in this spot. I haven't projected for 1.5 points less than Jared Allen, but he's going to be a 1/6 of the ownership. Bobby Portis is starting again against the Clippers. I have him projected for 5 fantasy points more than Jared Allen at this point, so I'll go there. Brooke Lopez I'd rather play in tournaments. Thomas Bryant I'd rather play in tournaments. Jaren Jackson Jr., who is center eligible, I'd rather play in tournaments. Saves you $400. And another matchup, by the way, in their swan song. This is the 4th Sacramento-Memphis matchup. And I went back and watched a ton of that tape today, and it's a good matchup for Triple J. He actually scored 30-plus fantasy points all 3 times.
Wow.
Which is not that incredibly surprising. I like Jaren Jackson in that matchup. I like Mike Conley would be the second guy I like there. I don't hate Garrett Temple, who looked pretty good in 2 of those games. FanDuel only for me, but you want sort of tournament-y off the board. In those 3 games, he had 2 30 fantasy point games, which,
How are you feeling about Gasol? I thought he looked reinvigorated last game in a way that was kind of weird.
It was a monster. You see his line in the last game at 12, 17, and whatever the hell for points? I don't remember the
boards, I think, really jumped out to me because he's not a guy who's been playing with a lot of effort.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, how are you feeling about him? Because he hasn't played that well versus Sacramento. That's been more of a Jaren Jackson situation so far this year.
Yeah,
But if
I
he's
like him in tournaments, and I don't like whereas I like looking at matchups to go like, look, this guy was good in this matchup 3 times this year, where you're talking about, say, Enes Kanter or Jaren Jackson Jr. or something. It's just like, this is a spot the guy can get it done in. I don't think someone necessarily doing poorly in that matchup is apropos of as much. It has something to do with, one of them was on a back-to-back. One of them, they gave Triple J more of the time at center. 2 of them, Conley was having big games. And if you go back previous years, I've seen enough of Marc Gasol and Willie Cauley-Stein on the court with each other. I certainly think there's an upside there. So Marc Gasol for me is just the fact that he is expensive relative to what I would project him at. He's $8K and $8,300, I want to say, on the 2 main sites. So, I haven't projected similarly to guys like... I don't have him that much higher than Montrezl Harrell, who's $1,500 cheaper on one site and $1,000 cheaper on the other. I don't have him that much higher if he starts at center than Noah Vonleh, who's more than $2,000 cheaper everywhere. Jared Allen, points per dollar, I'd have a little better. Bobby Portis, again, on DK, who'd be center eligible. So I don't mind Marc Gasol at all. He's a fine tournament play, but points per dollar would rank after those guys. And I do think it's more of a Conley spot. Conley's been good here. De'Aaron Fox has been good here all 3 games. If you're going to take a shot at someone from a pretty full Sacramento team, Fox would be my guy. Price there, not really attractive. I would rather play Conley at similar numbers. Yahoo, both Conley and Fox, I think, are 29. I like both of them in tournaments at that number, and obviously there's some money to throw around there. But, not the best game script, and it is worth pointing out that Sacramento has slowed down a lot due to some of the changes in personnel and just being unable to sprint 24 hours a day for 6 months. But, still a fine spot where I expect some guys to be good. But yeah, Triple J, Conley, Fox, then probably Gasol. Shout out Temple. Shout out Justin Holiday just for playing 36, 38, 40 minutes every goddamn game, which we expected. And it took 4 games for them to go around doing it. But now that's apparently the standard. And against you have to think against... Sacramento, there's a reasonable upside there. And shout out again, especially Yahoo, where I believe it is 12 for him, which would make me happier, except for Barton is 13. So I'll go Barton. But if I'm not going with Barton, probably Justin Holiday might be my second favorite small forward. Giannis is a power forward. So yeah.
Any Bogdan interest for you? He's had 2 big games in a row. I mean, I feel like the last one obviously was out to Aaron Fox. So that's going to give him some more assist upside. But the Brooklyn game, to me, I mean, he's shooting over 15 times, 15 to 20 times. He hasn't played well versus Memphis this year, but that's not a concern for me. I'm intrigued by him, and I feel like he's going to go a little bit underowned. If I were mass multi-entering today, I think I would want some exposure to him. But how are you feeling?
I think it plays a little bit more to Hield's strengths, so it ends up being I slightly prefer Buddy Hield if I'm going to go at one of those guys after Fox. But Bogdan is still. I really like Bogdan. He's after De'Aaron Fox, probably the best basketball player on this team all around. It'll be interesting to see where he compares next to, Bagley in a year or 2 or a couple other things going on there. But I really like Bogdan, so I'm never going to... And still DK, he's still whatever the hell it is, 5,600. The other day when I was off on, I think it was Tuesday, and we got the news, literally I said one thing in chat the entire day because I try to stay out of chat when it's not my day for shows and let everyone else do their job. But they were like, De'Aaron Fox is out, and I literally typed... Bogdan Day. That was it. That was the only thing I said. And then he went out and obviously mauled some people, which isn't surprising at all. I really like Bogdan, but matchup not brilliant. Having Fox back in, I think he's fine, but again, would not be the first place I'd want to go. And again, that lineup is getting a little clustered now. We expect to have Bielitsa back in. I don't know if he starts or not, but he's going to play. That pulls a few minutes predominantly off Bagley, but there is a trickle-down effect through the whole lineup where instead of 35 out of Fox, you get 32. And so I just, I'm a little more concerned about getting as many minutes for Bogdan, because if we go back and take a look, his minutes were getting a little dicey for a while there.
We're getting some questions about some of the point guards here, and I know this is a guy you've been big on the past, and then he kind of fell off the cliff there. Elie Okobo, another cheap point guard today, who's going to get some minutes here. How are you feeling about him? And also, how do you feel about him relative to Trey Burke in a FanDuel GPP?
I would play Burke in a FanDuel GPP. Okobo is great on DraftKings where he's the minimum. I expect him to start. Again, that team is missing Melton and Ayton and Warren. So they're missing 3 of their regular starters. A Kobo guy, you're certainly hoping for some steals upside out of him, but not super duper upside guy. You can get 40 out of him, but for tournaments, especially where I can drop the guy, I would rather play Trey Burke. But DraftKings, where I think Trey Burke is still not the minimum, I think you are spending some additional X $100. $500 on him, I would probably run a Kobo there and save the money. But Burke, a higher upside player, you just need him to actually get the time, and it's difficult to, with any degree of confidence, say that that's going to happen.
Yep, I think that checks out to me. Getting a question here about James Harden again, and obviously James Harden is a popular topic. We talked about him at more length up top, but how are you feeling about him if he's going to be 20% owned? Would you want to be above the field or under the field there?
Again, it's going to be site dependent for me, but I presume I would be over 20% on Yahoo, over 20% on FanDuel. Right about that on DK. That strikes me as about where I'd want to be. I don't have a strong take because the price is so big, but the value is there. It's really got very little to do with James Harden. It's got to do with Karl Anthony Towns and Kawhi Leonard and Giannis and Akobo and Napier and Mason Plumlee and all those guys. Like, if some of those other options, if the value works out really well, then Harden is better, who probably scores the most fantasy points on the day. If the value sucks and you were forced to cram in all of it to get James Harden, then it's really not the $13,500 you're spending on James Harden. It ends up being the $21,000 you're spending on him plus 2 pieces of value. And if that combined only nets you 100, then you didn't really get yourself anywhere. So it's sort of a complicated question, but I imagine I would be over that number on FanDuel and Yahoo, and probably right around it on DraftKings. It's the first day I haven't wanted to be well over the field on him. And that makes me nervous, to be honest. Clearly, we've all seen how dominant he has been, and despite, a worse matchup and all that, when you run out there and play 40 minutes and have 60% usage the whole damn time, it's really hard not to fall ass backwards into some fantasy points. So I hesitantly, and it's largely because I believe in the Giannis spot a lot, am a little inclined to go away. But that being said, I think I'd have something like 50 on Yahoo, 50 on FanDuel, and 20-25 on DraftKings at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that makes sense. For me, I'm a little bit over the field. I'm not playing any big tournaments today because I've just been in dire straits out with some head pain from totally legitimate illnesses and not being stupid as an adult. But I'm playing Harden in all the single entries I'm doing today because I still believe in the guy. And I mentioned it up top. I think he's got one more big run in him. I think this is his season finale before Chris Paul comes back and takes it away. So
Chris Paul will get hurt again. Don't worry.
That is true.
Let's see.
I got a question in the premium Slack, Eddie. We didn't touch on this guy, but he has been a popular, relatively cheap, not super cheap play. Dragon Bender, how are you feeling about him for PZ Min in the premium Slack?
I think he's fine as a cash game play. The minute should be there. I should point out another guy who, in the event it turns out he will play and or start, would be an immediate favorite, would be Richaun Holmes. Richaun Holmes is a fantasy point per minute monster. He's very Nerlens Noel-y in that, like, oh crap, he's gonna start. He's gonna he's gonna be the man. So if he starts, that cuts back on. So this being long way around of saying the price on Bender has come up more so in some places than other. He's normally not super upside guy. When he's 3,500, 3,800, 4,000, he's probably going to pay off that price if he starts at center. So I'm just fine with him. But, news being that they'll play Josh Jackson down at the 4, and if Richaun Holmes gets cleared to play, which I don't think we have news on, Dragon Bender could end up being pretty shitty. So I have some concern there, I guess would be my point. So I would try to restrict it to places where I could swap away if things went badly. And again, big fan of Richaun Holmes in the event we find out that he is starting.
Any other items you want to touch on before we go and take some more questions and probably some either-ors from the premium Slack and possibly YouTube as well?
Yeah, I mentioned Derek Favors, who's in a particularly smashable spot if Gobert takes a rest. And again, Gobert has not missed a game this year unless you count the I hit a water bottle and got ejected after 3 minutes game, which he technically played in. I do like Karl Anthony Towns tonight. He is one of very few centers who I don't mind playing against Gobert, and I'm going to like him even more if Gobert is out. But handles Gobert very well, just bounces to the outside. Last time they played, I want to say he took like 9 3-pointers. Like, he really modifies his game very interestingly in that environment. One of the times I've been more impressed with him. Let me click through. Go ahead and ask me some questions, and I'll just be looking through my notes here and see if there's anything else that strikes me as pretty. Again, whoever starts at center for the Knicks, that's pretty straightforward.
All right, let's see. We got a question here. Got some either ors on Yahoo. Would you go Alonzo Trier or Shabazz Napier?
Yeah, I really like both those guys. So, you can do both. I mean, you can play Akobo, Trier, and Napier for your 3 guards there for $32 or whatever that is, and have all kinds of upside there. I would be more inclined, I think, with the news that Moutier is out, to play Trier. It's close, but I will go with Trier. I would probably rank those guys generally. I'd like to play Trier over Napier over Akobo.
All right, let's see. We got a question from Antoine85. Would you go Harrell and Drummond or Fareed and Vucevic? Presumably for FanDuel.
I would probably play Fareed and Vucevic in cash, but I would probably play Harrell and Drummond in a tournament. A couple guys with just slightly better upside there. It's a decent Drummond spot, actually, despite their somewhat similarities as a player, just as big rebounders, etc. He has done very well against DeAndre Jordan in the past when they've shared the court together. So with him back, I think 8,800 is the best price on him. You can get 18 and 25 out of him in this spot. So I would go with the Drummond side of that in a tournament, but I would go with the other side in cash, which I feel more secure with. Vooch is going to get you 45, possibly 50, 55, but Vooch is in a really, really secure spot.
We got a question here, which I think we already know your answer to. You were very big on him, but maybe you'll surprise me here. Porter, Barton, or Kelly Oubre for a DK GPP?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Barton there. I don't have an issue with the other two guys, either of them. The environment for Oubre isn't the best going into Denver, but again, so many of the guys on that team missing that usage has to get sucked up by someone. We've seen big minutes, big usage out of him, and very reasonable production, even some defensive production out of him recently. So at that price, I don't mind Oubre, but I'd prefer Barton. Same thing with Porter. His base stats would lead me to think he'd be more productive than he has been recently. I think the ownership is still down, so again, in that low 6 range, I don't have an issue with him in tournaments, but I would rather play Barton than those guys. We will see. Maybe he'll disappoint me, but I just think Barton does a lot of damage to the Suns today. I think he gets you somewhere close to 40. Those other guys certainly could as well, but I just am slightly more confident with Will the Thrill.
Would you go with Pascal Siakam or Montrezl Harrell for FanDuel cash?
For cash, I would... That's a very good question.
Oh, and also, if you are a premium member, we just got an ownership update, so go check that out.
Well, I really like those guys. I will barely say Pascal, but that's I do not have an aversion to either of them at their prices in cash. But I will slightly take Pascal as I think a slightly safer wager.
For DK cash, would you go Harden and Nakobo or Russell and Tobias Harris if you have Giannis in your lineup?
I got to go Russell and Tobias Harris, but very, very close. That's funny. I have that projected for 0.6 points difference between the two, but I will go with the two median guys there.
Would you go Noah Vonleh or Jaren Jackson in Yahoo cash?
Again, I would want to get news that Vonleh is starting at center. So I will say Vonleh, presuming you know he is starting at center. If you don't have that news, it's probably enough for me to pick Jaren Jackson just for the moment. Tyler Johnson is starting again, by the way. As expected, they are running with that same starting lineup. So very good chance you get 30-something minutes out of him. So especially DK and Yahoo prices, Tyler Johnson is a very safe cash play.
Who is your favorite value power forward? For me on DK, it's got to be Plumlee, but
yeah, it is. I mean, it is Plumlee, but fire a question again if you were referring to FanDuel, and we can get into that. FanDuel is power forward is a wonderland. So
Yeah. Let's see. We got Giannis and Burke or Tobias and Bobby Portis for DK GPP.
I'm a little more inclined to run Tobias and Portis in a GPP, especially with where we project Giannis. But I like both those pairings. You're just that's the Burke train. Like I like Giannis. I like those other two guys to be really productive too. If you pull the 40 burger out of Burke there, then you're winning a tournament. That's not likely but possible. So it's just a risk tolerance correlation decision there. I like both those pairings.
Would you go Trier, Johnson, or Justin Holiday for DK cash?
For cash?
Yep.
Johnson.
All right, let's go to the YouTube chat. Coming through big. Any thoughts on Chris Middleton tonight? He is a nice potential pivot there to a chalky Giannis. Grades out pretty well for me. I don't mind him. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, there's some immediate leverage there. My concern slash approbation for Bledsoe would be the Bledsoe has looked really, really, really good. Like Bledsoe is our moneymaker for all of last week. Bledsoe is on, I don't know, 5 consecutive very good games at 3% ownership. And looks it too. And I was talking about him from the first game. I'm like, look, I really like what I'm seeing out of Bledsoe here. He's being more aggressive and he's hitting the basket. And there's some blowouts here, so you're not always getting a ton of time. But, Bledsoe's last... Oh, we'll go back 6 games. 28 minutes, 48 fantasy points. 26 minutes, 50 fantasy points. 22 minutes, 36 fantasy points. 25 minutes, 31 fantasy points. 31 minutes, 43 fantasy points. And his worst game out of the last 7, I guess that is 32 minutes, 37 fantasy points. That's really consistent, exceptional production. And again, the shot totals there over that span I just read are 21, 13, 15, 13, 14, 16. Middleton, on the other hand... who generally I do think this is a matchup that it favors more and is saving you $1,000. Shot totals over those same batches of games 15, 14, 17, 19, 11, 8, 15, 18. So taking slightly fewer shots, doesn't pick up as many assists, doesn't pick up the steals that he does. So I guess my answer is I'm absolutely fine with either Middleton or Bledsoe in tournaments. Setting aside their recent play and production and just sort of standing in the offense, I do think Middleton is the better play on paper. So you make me play one of them. I probably will go with Chris Middleton and not just look at the last half dozen games. But I am nervous that we are in a sort of a Bledsoe zenith moment here, and it'll continue to be at least some slight downgrade to Middleton's upside. But, Middleton is a full $1,000 cheaper at this point, which he should have been. There was a while there where Middleton was $400 more than Bledsoe, and Bledsoe was still 3% owned, and I just didn't understand what the hell was going on, and it made for a good week. But, and by the way, we were talking about the fantasy points there. Over those 6 games, over the last 4 games, Middleton has not reached 30 fantasy points. So, that's some degree of concern there. Going back before that, you got 30, 30, 36, 41, 32, 33, but... Bledsoe's steadily been outproducing and crushing him. So that would be my take. If you have Middleton in a tournament, I think it's just fine. Absolutely not surprised if he randomly puts up 40-something here today. But it does seem like Bledsoe is on the come, so they say.
All right. Going back to the premium Slack here. And again, if you are posting questions to the premium Slack, just tag me and it makes it a little easier to navigate between all the people chatting back and forth.
Don't hate Jeff Green at $4,300, by the way, in a tournament. If you're looking for another piece of that game, if you're stacking up that game. He's still cheap enough where real chance he still plays 30 whatever the hell minutes. Negative correlation with Bryant and a couple other things. A spot where he maybe doesn't get all the run we like to see him get because this is a game that won't necessarily go small. Vooch will probably be out there closing. Pretty hard to defend him with Jeff Green. But that number is still cheap enough that if I'm running 150 lineups, there's 5 Jeff Greens in there for me.
Somebody asked, J-Dog asking in the premium Slack, would you go Kelly Oubre or Paul Millsap?
Yeah, that's a good question. Assuming I don't have any other Suns and that I do have other Nuggets, which is likely the case, that's enough reason for me to go with Oubre. But generally I would project Millsap for a little bit more. So it sort of depends exactly what you're doing. I do think they are both very close together in the same ballpark there.
All right, let's check it, making sure there's no important news breaking. Going back to the YouTube chat, see if there's any good questions. Do you play Harden tonight? We talked about that. Let's see. Questions. All this chat is just streaming by. Would you go? This is a weird one. Dario, Kufis, or Davis?
Dario, Kufis, or Davis. I would still stick with Ed D there, just because I assume that's Ed Davis, Dario Saric, and Costa Kufis. Costa not in there for me. With everybody healthy, I have no idea what his role is going to be, but not enough for me. Ed Davis there, out of those three guys for me.
Any thoughts on Jared Bayless? I feel like we're getting that question again. He is a cheap player, who's been doing well, but we still have Teague and Rose questionable. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, again, I'm a big fan of being able to get in there. You need to know that Teague and Rose are both out. So, by all means, go into Jared Bayless. Be ready to move on to him in your Kobo spot. If you're on a late swap site, that makes absolutely tons of sense for me. And if he was in, I would have him, a hair under Trier and certainly under, say, Barton, depending what site you're looking at. But I would have him north of Shabazz by a little bit. So, I think at that point, you get 32 minutes of Bayless or something.
Gibbs asking in the premium Slack, Mitchell or Beal for a DK GPP?
I would go with Bradley Beal still. Mitchell, it's close. I just think I'm slightly more likely to get the 60 that I'm looking for out of that 9K out of Beal than I am out of Donovan Mitchell. So I'm just going to go with Beal for the odds of getting the tournament-winning score that I need there. If you went with Mitchell, you're hoping that Gobert is out, and it can certainly happen that way. But I would be a little more inclined towards Beal.
What are your thoughts on Rondé Hall's Jefferson tonight? He's a flat minimum on FanDuel.
I think he's fine then. I think most likely he plays 8 to 16 minutes. They've given me no indication that he's going to get what to me would be an appropriate role in that rotation because he is the player with the most clear upside who I'm the biggest fan of. But, yep.
Let's see. By the way, about to lock, so get those lineups in there. Is Whiteside a reasonable GP option tonight? That's an intriguing.
Yes, I think it's a reasonable GPP option. I think Adebayo is a reasonable GPP option too. Obviously, don't play them together, but perfectly valid spot for both those guys. So sure.
And Lofty in the premium Slack pointing out again. There's a lot of I'm really not showing the premium Slack that much, but there's been a lot of interesting stuff going on there. Lofty pointing out there's only one 7 p.m. game today, so if you are playing on DK and you have no Washington and Orlando, you're going to be in a position to be able to pivot some late breaking news about a certain Turkish man who's public enemy #1 in his home country.
Yeah, I love that we haven't heard that lineup yet. I love it. I am ready. I am ready for all the...
Pants down for this. Pants down time.
Pants will come off with Enes Kanter is starting. I'm going to call somebody and be like, I need you to place a bet for me. Enes Kanter to win.
Pants are at half mast in the interim, just in case.
Yeah, right now
we are locked.
I have loosened my waistband. I am prepared to flagellate. Let's, all right, so DK.
Daddy likes America's favorite game to close out the work week.
Yes. Who did we have highest in this game? Again, we have just the one game, which they did. All right, let me put it this way. I think they're just teasing me. And again, they obviously set this entire schedule at the beginning of the year. I know that when I say that they're screwing with the schedule, but they went through a couple great weeks of like 8 games at 7 p.m. and 8 games every night. And then this week literally again went 11 on Monday, 4 on Tuesday, 10 on Wednesday, 4 on Thursday, 10 on Friday. What is that shit? They'd gone back to a really nice 6 to 8 games every day. And then for some reason we've gone back to this horrific 3 days a week are too much and 2 days a week are too little. But
got to keep us on our toes. It keeps you spry.
I'm loading up the ownership. Something to do with football being gone or something. All right, chalkiest player. I'm challenging you. I think you can get this one. Only 2 teams: Wizards and Magic. Highest owned player.
Highest owned player. Is it Vucevic?
It is. 15.16%. Daddy likes that. Next is Aaron Gordon at 8.7%. Daddy likes that too. Good upside there. I liked him a little better on FanDuel where he's like $100 more, but proportionally less expensive. And power forward is really, again, a wonderland on FanDuel. But I like Gordon quite a bit at that price. So I like both those guys in tournaments. So no complaints. I like Vooch and Cash, actually. 15% Vooch, 8.7% Gordon, 8.3% Bradley Beal, again, Daddy likes, 6.4% Tomas Satoransky. I kind of doubt he has 2 monster games in a row. That's not really his thing, but, he's going to get the time. Dude's going to play 40 minutes. Like, it certainly can happen against, Augustine and his ilk. Ariza, 5.4, no problem with that. Otto Porter, 5%. Daddy likes that a lot. Evan Fournier, 3%. Daddy likes that a lot. I mean, against the Wizards is a matchup we do kind of want to target. And Fournier, a guy who carries some upside, the price back down under that 6 it was sticking at for a while, so I like that. Jonathan Isaac, 2% is fine. DJ Augustine, 1.74. Like more in cash than in tournaments. Thomas Bryant, 1.45. I like him at that number. Terrence Ross, 1.3. That's cool. The just aforementioned Jeff Green, 1.15. Jonathan Simmons, 0.33. Jurian Grant, 0.17. Sammy Decker, 0.12, getting in there. Mo Bamba, 0.1. Chasson Ramble, 0.04. Jan Mahinmi, 0.04. Kem Birch, 0.2. Wes Iwundu, 0.1. Gerald Martin, 0.1. Markieff Morris and John Wall each receiving a single entry. And Dwight Howard, congratulations. You 3 played yourselves.
That's support for the Wizards, even when they're on the sidelines. That's a true fan there.
Well, Dwight likes somebody to support him.
Be careful with that one. Here's actually, before we go, here's a question from Chris A. A little either or to close this out. Does Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew have more beneficial qualities to the scalp?
That's a great question. I don't know. I will get some Coke, or at least some Diet Coke, if I have to watch my girlish figure for the next one. Maybe I mean, I got my hair, to quote Ben Stiller, is feathered and it is lethal. If you look at this right now. Like it really comes together, and it's also highly caffeinated and a great pick-me-up.
There you go. So if you want to experiment with pouring soft drinks into your hair, now's the time to do it. If Eddie's doing it, it's what all the cool kids are doing. Make sure to like this video. Give us a like before you go out of the way here. It's just like tipping your bartender. It's a social norm, which we appreciate very much. Helps us get up the rankings. Helps us reach more people in our quest to actually help people be profitable at DFS. And speaking of that, actually, I just want to plug one thing here. For Josh is doing his $100 bankroll challenge on DK. He's going to be writing blogs about it on the site. He's going to be talking about it on videos. So check it out. Support this. It's a cool content thing, which frankly, I think we need to be doing more of at the site. And I just want to point that out because I think there's a lot of people out there who will be in a similar boat as what Josh is trying to do and build a $100 bankroll and build it up. So Check it out. Yeah. Gotta help the people, Eddie. That's what we try to do here. It's what you try to do every day. So we appreciate you as well. Any parting words before we go and call it a weekend?
No, I'm good. I'm in for the duration now. We took 3 days off out of the last 5 because there's just a number of days I'm supposed to work each month, and I was bound like 20 in a row, and they needed me to rest some. So I skipped all those 3 and 4 game days. But we're on for the rest of the month, so I'll be here the next, I think, like 7 days in succession. So I will see everybody probably all by my lonesome tomorrow.
Unlike those pussy NBA players, you thrive in back-to-backs.
Boom. That's right.
There we go. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great weekend. Wish you the best of luck, and we shall see you again soon.